Shabbat Shalom. And you shall love your neighbor as yourself. Seems pretty simple. In Hebrew, v'ahavta l'recha kamocha. You shall love your neighbor as yourself. What does that really mean? What does it mean to love somebody in that context? Can you be commanded to love? According to many commentators, we're not even commanded to love parents. So how can you be commanded to love just your neighbor? And then l'recha, your neighbor, what does it mean, your neighbor? Who is that? Is that anybody who lives near you? What if someone is a horrible person who lives near you? And what about the people who don't live near you? Is it okay not to love them? And then what does it mean, kamocha, like yourself? Is that even humanly possible, to love someone else like yourself? So many questions about what would appear to be a simple command. That's what led Hillel to reinterpret this to mean that which is hateful to you, don't do it unto your neighbor. That seems much simpler to be able to quantify. But I want to suggest that that command of loving your neighbor as yourself is actually the conclusion and an emphasis of the earlier part of the verse and the verse before it. In the book of Leviticus, and these are in the portions we're reading this Shabbat, of Acharei Mot and Kiddushim, and in Kiddushim in chapter 19, verse 18, is this commandment about loving our neighbors as ourselves. But right before that, it's part of the same verse. It says, you shall not take revenge or bear a grudge. You're not supposed to hold on to resentment, to conflict, to issues that you have with others. You're supposed to share with them what that is about so that you can release it. And in fact, the verse right before this one says that you shall reprove your neighbor, your fellow. They use different language, but we won't get confused about that. So what does that mean? You actually have an obligation to share with people when they've done something wrong, when you have conflict with them. Now, you have to do it in the right way. You can't embarrass them publicly, and there are very clear guidelines about what it means to reprove your neighbor. But now perhaps we can better understand that commandment about loving your neighbor as yourself. Right? When we have a conflict with somebody, we should be able to share it, and to share it with them in the right way, gently and lovingly. And when you do that, you will avoid taking revenge or bearing a grudge. And if you continue in that path, perhaps you can even lead up to loving your neighbor. The rabbis tell us that if we pursue this path, that very often by sharing with people when we have conflict, we're able to help them realize what it meant in that conflict. We're supposed to look at ourselves first and see how we might be diminished in what we do and what wrongs we have, and to understand the human foibles that we have. And when we can do that, acknowledge our own humanity and our own imperfections, share with others when we feel this conflict, rabbis tell us that hopefully we can resolve that conflict, and then we can live in peace with people. Maybe that's what it means to love your neighbors yourself, to be able to dwell in peace with them. On this Shabbat, wishing you a Shabbat Shalom, Shabbat of peace, Shabbat Shalom.